What's going on, everyone? Today we're going over 6 reasons why you should learn claw before 2025, as well as of course a tutorial on how to play claw yourself. Now I'll showcase this on Call of Duty, but this pretty much goes for any game, and it's really easy once you get the muscle memory down. So you'll see me playing claw in pretty much any game, even if it's not Call of Duty. Now before we get into the proper hand positionings and settings, we need to talk about why you would play claw in the first place. And the first reason that we'll talk about, of course, is just having better movement in general. Being able to do whatever you want with your movement in terms of laying down, sliding, jump shotting, without having to sacrifice anything related to your right stick. You can keep your centering going wherever you want to the entire time as you're moving, as you're strafing, as you're jumping, drop shotting, all the above when you play claw. And this helps especially in games like Call of Duty where movement is everything. And not only is having movement important, it's important to keep your centering in different areas because it is a twitch shooter and people can be coming from any direction at pretty much any time. So if that alone hasn't convinced you already, I'll talk about tip number 2, which is of course saving money. Now I do have a Scuff sponsorship and Scuff probably won't like me for saying this, but if you do learn how to play claw, you won't have to use anything other than the regular default controller for whatever console or controller feel that you enjoy the most. That being said, you'll still catch me playing with a Scuff because I enjoy the quality, I enjoy how the sticks feel, and of course the controller looks amazing too. So I have a code LunchTime as well as a link in the description if you are interested in Scuff, whether that be because you play claw and you enjoy their controllers, or if claw doesn't work out for you and you want to go with paddles, I would definitely recommend going with Scuff. That being said, back to the point that I made earlier, it will save you a ton of money down the road, especially if you're on a budget, to only have to worry about playing with the default controllers of whatever console that you prefer. It's a $60 investment instead of something much higher every time your controller either wears down or it's just time for a new controller. And now with those 2 tips down, we can talk about something else, which is actually comfort, which sounds weird to say because a lot of people think of claw as uncomfortable, but it's very likely you're just not holding the controller the right way. When I first switched to the PS5 controller, I thought it was super uncomfortable and I wasn't able to play claw on it. However, after getting the muscle memory down, it feels uncomfortable going to any controller that's not the PS5 controller. So before we even get into the grip, we have to go over the right settings for Call of Duty. And this does transfer over to Black Ops 6, so if you're watching this while Black Ops 6 is out, it's no worries at all. This video will still remain helpful for you. Now, the button layout that I use while playing claw is actually default flipped. So it's the exact same button layout. The only difference is that L1 and L2 and R1 and R2 are flipped. So you'll see if I go back into the game, if I press L1, I'll aim in, and R1 is to shoot. The reason that you do this in terms of comfort is that when you're clawing, there's not as big of a separation between your index finger and your middle finger as you see on the right side as there is when you're L1, R1. So this is pretty much your hand positioning as you're going into playing claw. And the reason we play default flipped is because it's way more comfortable. You could still get away with playing tactical and using R3 for movement as well. However, for me and the way I play claw, default flipped is the way to go. And when we go into gameplay, I have automatic sprint off. In Black Ops 6, I plan on running automatic tactical sprint though. I run single tap run with all my grounded mantles and stuff like that off, and my slide dive behavior as hybrid, which is super important both for claw and for the upcoming Black Ops 6. But in reality, those are all the main settings that you'll need to do for claw. And now that that's done, how do we actually hold the controller? Now, before we get into this, it's very possible if your hands are too small or too big that number 1, claw might not be comfortable for you, or number 2, the method that works for me might not work for you. So I play around with this because it's very possible that one size does not fit all when it comes to claw grip. But regardless, what worked the best for me and made PS5 claw very comfortable is here. So basically what we do with the PS5 controller, again, this is the PS5 Scuff Reflex, you take the L2, you see how there's a little notch in the L2 that pokes out. Your left middle finger is going to hook underneath that notch, and that is where the majority of the weight of the controller is going to stay. You see I can let go with my right hand and the controller stays very sturdy. It's not moving anywhere. My pinky and ring finger rest on the left handle of the controller, and if I unplug the controller and then show you here, this is what it looks like. So my left middle finger again is hooked underneath L2. My ring finger and pinky finger fall into place at the left handle of the controller, and then my left index finger is up top to do L1 and R1. So the important part about claw is that the controller weight entirely rests on the left hand. What this allows for your right hand to do is simply just fall into place on top of the controller. You can hook your right ring finger underneath R2, which I actually do to help with some of the weight of the controller, but the main reason that I do that is to keep my hand placement very consistent as I'm playing claw. So left hand placement is set up. My right ring finger hooks underneath R2. Then I allow my right middle finger to be on R1 and hover over R1. And my right index finger is kind of draped over the square and the triangle button like so. See, it's kind of resting close to where the start button is, so I can press it like that. It's light enough on the controller so it's not accidentally pressing any buttons. The reason this is my resting position is because this isn't terribly comfortable up on Y the entire time. So going from here up to wherever I need to go, whether that be square, triangle, circle, or X, is very, very easy. And you'll see as I go about various movements, My finger can very easily go from circle to X for slide canceling, holding down circle for snaking, and then spamming X for jumping. If I need to reload, it's super easy to do that too. And then I can weapon swap all the above just while pressing everything that I need to with my index finger. I also have a default PS5 controller that I was showing earlier, and I can show you as well that same method of holding it. Left middle finger underneath L2, right ring finger underneath R2, and then the rest of the controller kind of falls into place there. If you play on PS4 controller, I have a PS4 controller here. If you're wondering what these grips are, it's control-free performance grips. I have a code there that you can use, which is code lunch, as well as a link in the description for control free. The extra feel that it adds to the controller makes it a little bit easier to get into that claw position. The difference between PS4 and PS5 though is actually all based on the left hand and where the left hand holds the controller. So instead of hooking my left middle finger underneath L2 like I would on the PS5 controller, I actually stretch my left middle finger out all the way across the controller like so, and that's what holds the weight of the controller. This is mainly just because of the different build of the controller and what I've found most comfortable. So when I play claw on the PS4 controller, the important thing is you stretch out your middle finger as far as you can across the back of the controller to hold that weight, and then let the right hand fall into place. You can still hook your right ring finger underneath R2 like so to keep your hand placement consistent, and this is what claw would look like on the PS4 controller. I don't have an Xbox controller, otherwise I would show you that, but just know that when I started playing claw, I was actually on Xbox, so just know it's possible and it's very comfortable. Again, in terms of comfort, the next thing that we need to talk about is aiming and muscle memory. Your aim will actually improve with claw, and you need to keep that in mind. The reason it will improve with claw is because you're able to do pretty much everything you need to in terms of movement while keeping your centering exactly where it needs to go, because your right thumb never has to leave the analog stick at all. However, muscle memory is going to be the key for that. This might make you feel a little bit better about getting used to claw. I'll try to control my recoil from here while in a normal claw position, and that's what it looks like. However, if I move my right hand to a more default controller grip and try to control recoil, I haven't gotten used to this muscle memory yet, so the recoil doesn't look nearly as good. Not to mention, I'm not even pairing that with movement or anything like that. Just know if I were to try to play not on claw, just the tiniest change of my right hand positioning makes it so that my thumb feels totally weird on the right analog stick. And your hand's gonna feel the same if you're going from a normal grip to a claw grip. So either be extremely patient or load up a private match for a matter of days or weeks before you can get used to that muscle memory. And just know when your aim is not very good in the very beginning of getting used to claw grip, that's okay. You'll get used to it over time. That should not be a reason to not learn claw. When you're first learning claw, getting the muscle memory down of your aim is more important than getting your movement down. So yes, I would still practice your sliding, your jumping, and of course your reloading and YYing while using claw. But the most important thing is just getting the comfort down. If anything, I would hop in a lobby against bots or just in the firing range and practice shooting and controlling your recoil while simply leaving your right index finger on top of the controller. Don't worry about controlling recoil while jumping or while drop shotting or anything like that. Strictly just shoot bots or control recoil while draping your right index finger over top of the controller. Get used to the feeling of shooting your gun while having your index finger on top of it, instead of the feeling of controlling recoil while not in the claw position. So as you get used to shooting bots and controlling recoil while simply holding your right index finger on top of the controller, then get used to adding movement to it, adding jumping while shooting, adding snaking and then drop shotting while shooting, spamming crouch, or going straight from snaking to shooting. All the stuff that you're going to be doing in the middle of an actual game, get used to that second. And like I said earlier, be patient with it as well. This is something that could take a matter of like days and weeks to get used to. And so if your muscle memory isn't there yet, give it a couple days, stay patient with it, shoot a lot of bots, and I promise you, you'll eventually get used to it. That being said, if it hurts or you're pushing through pain, definitely don't do that. This should feel comfortable, especially with the grips that I was talking about earlier. And there's simply some people or some builds where if your hands are too small or your hands are too big, claw might not be right for you. So that's okay too. But do not let your aim getting worse be a reason to avoid playing claw, because it will get better over time. We touched on this a bit earlier, but Black Ops 6 is a huge reason to want to learn claw, especially before 2025. Black Ops 6 is the first Call of Duty where sliding and diving are both equally as important, and Omni Movement only further emphasizes how important it is to be able to move in Black Ops 6. If you become used to claw, you can move in any direction with any mechanic you want to while being able to aim like normal. Not to mention, if y'all played Advanced Warfare, you know what I'm talking about. When you're sprinting and moving in any direction, your controllers might be worn down twice as fast as they have been in previous Call of Duties. Therefore, back to the point of saving money, you'll want to be able to pick up and play with any controller that you can choose. And the final reason why learning claw before 2025 is essential is because of the in-depth uses of Omni Movement coming up in Black Ops 6. Fortunately, I have an Omni Movement guide for Black Ops 6 that goes over everything you need to know, so check out this video for that guide.